nobody expected it. Not the media, not Sara Bluma herself, and definitely not Can Yaman's fans. For months, Sara had quietly built her presence online, sharing moments from sets, behind-the-scenes glimpses, friendly interactions, and occasional comments that hinted at her growing closeness to Can. At first, people didn't pay much attention. She seemed like any other actress, trying to gain traction in a brutally competitive industry. But then something changed. A single photo. A single interaction. A single moment where Sara stood just a little too close, smiled just a little too warmly, or posted a caption that fans interpreted as territorial. And suddenly, the internet exploded. It didn't take a scandal. It didn't take a confession. It didn't take a public statement. Just one moment that made fans say, "Wait, what is going on here?" Overnight, Sara Bluma went from a rising actress to one of the most criticized names in Can Yaman's universe. And the reason wasn't simple jealousy or gossip, it was deeper, more emotional, and rooted in years of history that fans refused to let go of. Because the truth is this, no woman enters Can Yaman's life without stepping into the shadow of Demet Özdemir. And Sara? She walked right into the fire without realizing it. The backlash hit instantly. Comments flooded her posts. Every video she appeared in got dissected. Every expression, every gesture, every accidental like became fuel for a fandom already on edge. But the shocking part wasn't the hate itself. It was the intensity. Fans weren't mildly annoyed. They were furious, openly, loudly, relentlessly. Why? Because they believed Sara Bluma represented something they weren't ready for, a replacement. A threat to an emotional story they have protected for years. A reminder that Can Yaman might actually move on in ways they can't control. To these fans, Sara didn't just appear in his life, she intruded into a sacred space. A space filled with memories, interviews, chemistry, tears, and unspoken emotions shared between Can and Demet, a space fans built into a fantasy, a belief, of maybe one day. And in their eyes, Sara shattered that maybe. It didn't matter what she said. It didn't matter if she was innocent. It didn't matter if she never intended harm. What mattered was this, she wasn't Demet Özdemir. And for a huge part of the fandom, that was unforgivable. The comments grew harsher. The edits mocking her increased. Entire fan pages dedicated themselves to exposing her, despite having nothing to expose. Sara found herself trapped in a storm she never created, a storm she couldn't escape, because every move she made only fueled it further. Photos with Can? She's using him. Silence? She's hiding something. Smiling? She's desperate for attention. Not smiling? She's angry because fans don't accept her. There was no winning. No safe zone. No neutral ground. And the saddest part? Can Yaman didn't even need to say anything. His silence only made fans more determined to protect him, even if they were protecting him from someone who had done nothing wrong. This wasn't just hate. This was obsession, memory, loyalty, and heartbreak all tied together, and Sara Bluma had stepped straight into the center of it. Sara Bluma thought she understood fame. She thought she understood attention, criticism, pressure, all of it. But she didn't understand the Demet barrier, the invisible wall every woman faces the moment she appears anywhere near Can Yaman. And no one, absolutely no one, warned her. The Demet barrier isn't about jealousy. It isn't about simple fan obsession. It's about years of emotional investment, years of watching two people create a connection on screen so intense, so electric, so painfully real that fans are convinced it wasn't acting. To millions, Can and Demet didn't play love, they lived it. Their story became the audience's story. Their chemistry became a comfort. Their silence became mystery. Their distance became heartbreak. So when Sara Bluma suddenly appeared in the same orbit, fans didn't see a new colleague or friend. They saw a threat to the last piece of magic they were still holding on to. And that's why the reaction towards Sara wasn't mild annoyance. It was a full emotional revolt. The warning signs were everywhere, in comments, in edits, in reaction videos, in tweets that went viral in minutes. But Sara, she didn't understand what she had stepped into. She thought the hate came from her accent, or her acting, or her style. But none of that mattered. The truth was brutally simple: she wasn't Demet. She would never be Demet. And fans didn't want anyone else in that space. The more Sara tried to be natural, the more fans interpreted it as manipulation. If she laughed near Can, she was forcing chemistry. If she avoided him, she was pretending to be innocent. If she praised him in an interview, she was using his name. If she said nothing, she was waiting to strike. It didn't matter what she did, the narrative always painted her as the villain of a story she wasn't even part of. But the real turning point came during a moment that should have been harmless, a short behind-the-scenes video. Sara was standing next to Can, smiling, nothing flirtatious, nothing inappropriate, nothing unusual. But fans zoomed in, slowed the footage down, analyzed every blink, every millimeter of their distance, every pixel of their expression. And that night, the comments section turned volcanic. Why is she so close to him? She's trying to replace Demet. She thinks she's the new star, but she's wrong. She's ruining everything. It wasn't just criticism. It was emotional poetry written in rage. Because in the minds of fans, Sara didn't just enter Can's life. She tried to rewrite a love story that wasn't hers to touch. And then came the hashtags, thousands of them, organically created, spreading like wildfire. Hashtag not my couple, hashtag we know the truth, hashtag Demet and Can forever. Sara had officially become the symbol of a fandom's biggest fear. That their story, the story they held so tightly for so long, was about to be erased. But the most shocking part? This hate, this avalanche of anger, didn't come from Sara doing something wrong. It came from her simply existing in the wrong place, at the wrong time, near the wrong man. A man fans had already chosen a partner for, and that partner wasn't her. If part 1 was the spark and part 2 was the gasoline, then part 3 was the explosion that sent the entire fandom into chaos. Because there was one moment, one tiny, almost insignificant moment, that made fans say, Tamam. Bu artık fazla. That's it. She crossed the line. And what caused it? Not a kiss. Not a confession. Not a scandal. Just one sentence. During a casual Q&A, Sara was asked a simple, harmless question: what do you think about working with Can? A question any actor could answer without drama. A question every co-star has answered 1,000 times before. But the problem wasn't the question. It wasn't even the answer. It was the way fans interpreted that answer. Sara smiled, a normal, friendly smile, and said, he's an incredible person. We get along very well. That's it. 2 sentences. But to the fandom that worships the history, the chemistry, and the emotional shadow of Can and Demet, it was the equivalent of touching a nuclear button. Within minutes, Twitter erupted. She thinks she has a chance. She's claiming him. Who does she think she is? We get along very well? Girl, sit down. She's forcing a narrative and we see it. She wants attention. This is disrespectful. Even though Sara meant nothing by it, fans heard everything in it. They heard ambition. They heard confidence. They heard a hint of emotional closeness. And worst of all, they heard threat. Because for them, any woman who gets too comfortable around Can is trying to take Demet's place. The next 48 hours were brutal. Fan accounts posted side-by-side edits of Demet's interviews versus Sara's. People compared body language, smiles, eye contact. Some accounts slowed down old footage to prove Sara's intentions. Others wrote paragraphs explaining why she didn't deserve to talk about Can like that. It wasn't logical. It wasn't fair. But it was emotional, deeply emotional. Because in their hearts, fans believed, no one should speak about Can Yaman with that level of warmth except one woman. And it wasn't Sara. But then, it escalated even further. A viral video appeared, an edit where someone took a clip of Sara and added dramatic music, captions like, "She wants his spotlight. She's replacing Demet. She's trying too hard." It got millions of views. And the comment section? A battlefield. Sara couldn't defend herself, anything she said would make it worse. Can didn't respond, his silence was interpreted as proof he didn't approve. Demet stayed out of it, making fans feel even more protective. Soon, Sara wasn't just unliked. She was officially labeled by the fandom, the intruder. The outsider. The girl who dared to get too close. And from that day on, everything she did, anything she did, was judged through that lens. If she posted a selfie? She's trying to look like Demet. If she smiled near Can? She's forcing chemistry. If she ignored Can? She's trying to play hard to get. If she spoke? She wants attention. If she stayed silent? She's calculating. Sara wasn't living her life anymore, she was living inside their narrative, a narrative she couldn't escape from. And the saddest part? She had no idea how she even became the villain. The hate didn't come because she did something wrong. It came because fans believed she did something forbidden, she stepped into a story that wasn't hers. Up until this point, the hate towards Sara Bluma was loud, intense, and emotional, but it was still about the situation. Fans were angry because of what they thought she represented, not because of who she truly was. But then came the day everything changed. The day the backlash stopped being about Can, Demet, or the past, and became about Sara herself. It started with a harmless Instagram story, something completely ordinary. Sara posted a short clip from her dressing room, a mirror selfie, a soft smile, a calm background. Nothing provocative. Nothing suggestive. Nothing unusual. But the caption? That's what ignited the fire. She wrote, "Some people misunderstand kindness." That was it. Just one vague sentence. She didn't mention names. She didn't hint at anything specific. She didn't even allude to Can. But the fandom? They took it personally. Very personally. Within seconds, comments poured in, "She's talking about us. Who does she think she is? Kindness? She wants attention. She's blaming the fans for her behavior. She's playing the victim card now." It didn't matter whether Sara meant the fans or not. The fandom had already convinced itself that the message was aimed at them. And once they felt attacked, the tone changed completely. No more subtle shade. No more passive-aggressive jokes. No more mockery. Now, it was war. Fan pages began dissecting her entire social media history. They pulled old posts, old stories, old interviews, anything they could twist into a narrative. Every smile became manipulation. Every compliment she gave became strategy. Every silence became hidden agenda. They didn't want explanations. They wanted to win. But the darkest moment came when a large fan account posted a thread titled, "Why We Don't Trust Sara Bluma," full explanation. It contained misinterpreted screenshots, out-of-context quotes, slow-motion videos claiming flirtation signals, side-by-side comparisons with Demet, fake assumptions presented as facts, 20,000 angry comments agreeing with it. The thread went viral. Not because it was true, but because fans were desperate to protect their own narrative. Can plus Demet equals destiny. Anyone else equals enemy. And Sara? She was the enemy of the ideal story. But here is where it gets brutal, the hate didn't stay online. People sent her DMs saying she should stay away. Others wrote that she was ruining something beautiful. Some even insulted her looks, her voice, her career, things that never had anything to do with Can at all. Sara didn't respond. She didn't lash out. She didn't defend herself. But the silence only made fans more aggressive, because in their minds, silence equals guilt. Calmness equals arrogance. Not responding equals confirmation. They weren't reacting to Sara. They were reacting to what they believed about her. The fandom was no longer protecting Can Yaman from Sara. They were protecting their fantasy from reality. And the moment Sara realized that no matter what she did, no matter what she said, no matter how kind or respectful she tried to be, they had already decided who she was the moment she finally understood this wasn't about her actions. It wasn't about her personality. It wasn't about her intentions. It was about a story fans refused to let anyone else enter. A story whose ending they had already written, with Can and Demet as the eternal leads, and Sara as the interruption they'd do anything to erase. By now, the hate wasn't random. It wasn't emotional chaos. It wasn't even about right or wrong anymore. It had become systemic. Inevitable. Predictable. Because the truth nobody wants to say out loud, is this: Sara Bluma never stood a chance. Not from the first day. Not from the first photo. Not from the first rumor. Why? Because fans weren't rejecting Sara. They were rejecting what her presence symbolized. For years, the fandom kept one story alive, the story of Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir. A story built on chemistry, interviews, glances, silence, heartbreak, hope. A story that felt unfinished, paused, unresolved. To fans, that wasn't just a celebrity pairing. It was a memory. A comfort. A fantasy they carried with them. A what if they refused to let go of. So when Sara Bluma appeared, smiling, confident, natural, present, she didn't walk into Can's life. She walked into their story. A story millions believed they had the right to protect. And the fandom reacted like any group guarding something sacred, with instinct. With jealousy. With fear. With rage. Because Sara wasn't just a woman standing next to Can. She was a reminder that their fantasy might never come true. A reminder that Can might move on. A reminder that Demet might not return. A reminder that real life doesn't follow the script fans wrote in their minds. So they fought back. Not to hurt Sara personally, but to defend the version of the story they couldn't live without. And Sara became the casualty of a love story she never belonged to. The more she stayed silent, the more fans projected. The more she smiled, the more they doubted. The more she worked, the more they attacked. It didn't matter if she was kind. It didn't matter if she was professional. It didn't matter if she had zero interest in replacing anyone. Because to the fandom, she already had. And then came the moment the internet will never forget. A fan posted this comment, just one sentence, and it spread everywhere like wildfire: "We're not attacking Sara. We're defending Can and Demet." That was the final verdict. No facts. No logic. No evidence. Just emotion shaped into justification. Sara Bluma was officially the antagonist in a story she didn't ask to be part of. But here's the darkest twist of all: even if Sara disappeared tomorrow. Even if she said nothing for the rest of her life. Even if she stayed far from Can forever. The next woman would face the same fate. The next smile would be questioned. The next rumor would be attacked. The next presence would be rejected. Because the hate was never about Sara. The hate was about losing the last piece of a story fans still believe in, Can plus Demet. Sara Bluma isn't a villain. She isn't a threat. She isn't the reason fans are angry. She is simply the face that appeared at the wrong moment in front of the most emotional, most protective, and most deeply invested fandom in Turkish celebrity history. The avalanche of hate was never about her personality. Never about her intentions. Never about her actions. It was about the story she unintentionally stepped into. A story fans have guarded with their hearts for years. A story they still hope will continue someday. A story with two names forever tied together, Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir. For fans, that story is not fiction. It's not a memory. It's not just nostalgia. It's unfinished business. And as long as that remains true, any woman standing too close to Can will face the same avalanche Sara did. Not because she deserves it, but because fans still refuse to let go of the ending they wanted.